Hey everyone, welcome back to the All Music Matters on That podcast. I'm your host, Brian. Today, welcome some special guests from the band 3 Bravo. We got Greg, and we got Papa Bear, Dennis Bowden. How y'all doing today?
Doing great.
Can't complain on my end.
Yeah. Just want to make sure, but Greg's got the little chillin' all over the place, cause a whole lot of ruckus. Yeah, I guess that's Saturday, so yeah, it's all good there. So I guess, which part of the world are y'all hailing from?
Well, we're from Utah, and I'm pretty. Hello, sweetie. I'm pretty far down. Well, I'm about the middle. City called West Haven.
And I'm all the way up north, pretty close to the Idaho border, actually.
That's pretty cool. Actually, I've never been to Utah, so I guess how is it this time of the year?
But the summer spell is broken, and it's starting to cool off real nice. Utah, if you're a skier, you'll want to come here. Utah has amazing skiing. In the summer, if you go down south, there's lots of rock climbing. We've got the Zion's National Park and Moab, and so if you like to get in your razor and tool around in the dirt and dust, Utah's amazing for stuff like that.
It's funny you mentioned that. Okay, now it's coming to me. I was at Zion National Park.
Yeah.
Beautiful place. I got some killer photos and everything there too. So, I guess, how you guys been recently? I guess, what's new in the music band 3 Bravo?
Well, we've kind of taken a bit of a break. We just released our album Stoneside that was in honor of Craig's son that we lost. And I moved to a new house, and so I've kind of been occupied with some of that, but things have settled down quite a bit, so I'm actually going to start writing some new tunes for the guys to take a look at, and they'll start writing some new lyrics for me to take a look at, and we're going to get things up and running again.
All right, sounds good. And you'll get to elaborate more on that story here in just a little bit here too. But Greg and Dennis, I want to welcome you both to my podcast right here. And the way it's going to work is I'm going to ask you guys some questions. Let's get to know the guys behind the music right here as well here too. So, you all ready?
You betcha.
Of course. It should be noted, though, that Josh, he ended up having to work a little bit extra, so he won't be joining us, unfortunately, today.
All right. We're going to talk about the band here, too. I want to also know who the current lineup is here, too, but we'll get to that in just a sec. But I think for a while we have some peace and quiet with Greg. Like I said, Greg, can you go first real quick and just tell us your backstory of who you are and how you became a musician?
Sure, yeah. My basic backstory, so after high school, I decided to join the Marine Corps. Did that for about 7.5 years. Would have done a little bit more, but I decided to injure my knee, so that ended that career. And so just decided that I was going to dedicate myself to my family and everything like that, and that's where I focus most of my time. I actually homeschool my kids, things like that. And then music-wise, you can thank the gentleman right there for getting me introduced to awesome music. Ever since I was a kid, he was listening to the good old hard rock and heavy metal, and I mean, every radio station we were listening to pretty much was in those veins. And started out as a drummer, actually, before I moved to bass. Practiced for a couple years, and then Josh, my little brother, he decided to get on there after about a week and was already better than me. So I was like, well, screw it, I'm not doing that anymore. But I picked up bass and had a pretty good natural knack for it. Mostly jammed with my brother and my dad. I did have a couple of somewhat attempts, I guess you could say, at some bands throughout high school and stuff like that. But none of them really panned out, usually because of a guitarist not being willing to learn an entire song. So just kind of floated around and jammed with them. And kind of lost a little bit of the love for music for a little bit, just because, you know, you're going through some of the stuff after coming back from Iraq and things like that, just kind of depressed and needed to find an outlet, and ended up picking back up the old bass and started playing again. And that I found was actually pretty therapeutic for me. So I kept going. And then my dad, he's like, hey, Hey, you haven't recorded before. Me and Josh have recorded. Why don't we get some of the stuff that you've done recorded? And then we rolled into now.
I'll tell you, well, that at least explains the name 3 Bravo, but I guess he elaborated the name here in just a sec. But let's get to the Dennis story real quick.
Oh gosh. My story goes clear back to when I was 13 years old, and I heard Kiss for the first time. And so it was probably 1974, 1975. And I don't know if you know the mindset of a just new teenage boy to see a band like Kiss. They were like literal music gods to me. And I happened to go up to visit a sister in Spokane, Washington, and I saw a commercial for their concert. And I was just like staring at the TV, and oh my gosh, they're actually coming here. And her husband said, "Oh, you want to go see those guys live?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, let's go." So he took me to Kiss. It was my first concert. I was blown away. And so of course, when I got home, I had to tell my mom, "Hey, I need a guitar." She found one at a yard sale for me. It was $10. And then she hooked me up with a couple of music lessons at a local guitar store. And he was a really nice dude, but man, he would not teach me what I wanted to learn. I'm like, I'm thinking Detroit Rock City here, Dr. Love, I want to know those songs. Oh no, we need to learn Baby Come Back, because you need these jazz chords and these. No, I'm like, nah, I don't care about any of that stuff. So after about 4 lessons, I let him go, and just buckled down and learned. I learned that I had a gift for playing by ear, and so I was able to learn some of those songs on my own. Enough so that I hooked up with some guys that I was in school with. We formed a little band called Crystal Rush, and we were, how in a lot of junior highs and high schools, there's the band, there's that one band that, the back parking lot crew goes to see, and they go to parties and stuff like that. That was us. We never really played danceable music. So we didn't get invited to play the school dances, but if you had a backyard kegger, we were the guys to call. So that band kind of fell apart when after some of the guys basically they wanted to go their separate ways and try different bands, and so I kind of turned inward a little bit after that and raised my kids. I actually made it out onto the road with a band called No Quarter, and we had a booking agent. And just playing in bars and stuff like that, I realized, this isn't going to lead to a career. There's not going to be any record producers here in Green River, Wyoming, and those really nice bars up there. So I kind of gave it a rest for a while, couple of decades really. I kind of kept playing a little bit, and all along, from 13 to 53, or however old I was when we started 3 Bravo, I kept writing little riffs. I would take my guitar to bed with me at night, and I would just, if I thought something sounded kind of cool, I'd turn my phone on and record it. And so I have this stash of like hundreds of tiny little riffs to draw from. And so after I think it was in 2014, I went back to my high school guys, and I said, I wanted to create some CDs with them. I wanted to actually record with them. So I bought all of the software and the equipment, and I got the Crystal Rush music recorded. And Josh, in the meantime, had recorded with some of his projects. And Craig, as Craig mentioned, he is the only one of us guys who hadn't actually recorded, but he had a song written about his feelings about being in Iraq, and it's actually on the first 3 Bravo album called Filth. And I just thought, hey Craig, why don't we get together and we'll get that song actually solid and recorded, so that you can, have that feather in your cap. And we got that, and it went pretty quick, It's a fairly decent tune, and it's fairly simple. And I just thought, well, heck, let's just keep going. I have a son-in-law that had some really killer lyrics that I wrote some music to, and he didn't want to take it any further, so he gave those lyrics to us, and that became Pushing You Away. Then I started drawing from that pool of hundreds of riffs that I had for decades, and we just started putting stuff together that way. Like I said, we kind of went back and forth. I'd put up some music, and they'd put up some lyrics, and I'd tweak the lyrics a little bit. They'd tweak my tunes a little bit, and we wound up with a good 10 songs, and got our first album, and did our second one pretty much the same way. And I'll let Craig talk more about the Stone Side album, because that's so near and dear to him. But those first two albums, that's basically how they came about, is just a little bit of interest in giving Craig an opportunity to get recorded on his stuff, and then just going, hey, this is kind of cool. Let's keep doing this. So that's hopefully a decent enough nutshell.
That's pretty good. And I actually do remember seeing Kiss, and I think The Who was actually the last one before COVID. They came around here too.
Oh, so, wow, that would have been really cool.
But I did see Kiss. I think it was like the year before. It was like, well, they always keep calling like the last tour they'll be doing, but it's not. So it wouldn't surprise me if they come back. So.
Oh, me either. Yeah.
But it's actually a good choice. Actually, my dad really cranks the radio up whenever Detroit Rock City comes on. So.
Oh, I love that song. It's still so heavy to all these days. There's still a few of those tunes from each band where they kind of lost their way a little bit. Some of their stuff isn't great, but Detroit Rock City is Kiss's, in my opinion, it's their greatest song. Motley Crue has a few good ones where you just like shout at the devil. You hear that song, you go, oh my gosh, turn it up. Each band has, like, if you have one song like that, that's the song that carried you.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right. And first off, Greg, thank you so much for your service there too. And actually, I do have questions about the armed forces and stuff, but I guess let's do 3 Bravo right here too. So I guess whoever wants to maybe elaborate any more on the history, or maybe just talk about it, I guess. And who's in the current lineup? Go ahead.
So our current lineup is actually 3 of us. There's obviously myself, my dad, Dennis, and then my brother, Josh. He actually does dual work, dual duty with the drums and the vocals. Not at the same time, hasn't quite gotten talented enough for that yet, but still pretty gosh darn talented when it comes to either, as long as he's doing it by itself. The name 3 Bravo is actually kind of a fun story. So when my dad approached and was asking, if I wanted to record and get some stuff done, it got to the point where we now kind of had a few ideas going, for songs and stuff. And it's like, well, maybe we'll actually do a whole album. And so that kind of spawned, well, what about, social media? Because, maybe we want to try getting some people to listen to it, and, we need a name if we're going to promote. And, we spitballed a few things, and nothing was just like one of those type moments, And so I look at the top of the chat that we had, the little text group, and it was 3B. And me being a military background, I was like, Phoneticus Bravo. 3 Bravo sounds kind of cool.
Well, first, Craig, it was 3 Bowdens, 3 boys. We didn't know what to call it.
But yeah, so I was thinking, that, Bravo works. And so I floated the idea, and they're like, yeah, that sounds all right. And I'm like, if you guys go with it, coincidentally, the squad that I was with when I was in Iraq, our call sign was 3 Bravo as well. So it kind of does a little double tap there, one to kind of talk about us being the three boys, the three Bowdens, and then it also kind of pays homage to the guys that I served with as well. And once I said that, they're like, "Oh, dude, that like, there's no such thing as a coincidence.
Yeah.
That's just too close." So it ended up sticking.
I'll say that's definitely a divine intervention sort of moment right there, going full circle as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can see. Actually, I do know the armed forces always used like I always thought it was like more coordinates whenever they're like trying to like get an aircraft carrier or something, or maybe mark a location. So I know using Bravo and other ones like Foxtrot or anything else, I know that's what they tend to use for coordinates wise and stuff like that. So I guess what made you want to go into the armed forces? I guess, and I guess what'd you do?
So I was infantry. So frontline dude. My specific MLS in the infantry was a machine gunner. That's what they assigned me. I didn't have any choice with that one. Well, once you sign that contract, they decide what you're going to do in the job you want to go into. But my biggest motivation, I kind of always leaned towards maybe joining the military. I talked about maybe going to college first, becoming an officer, some things like that. But then when September 11th happened, it was a month away from me turning 17, and that's when you're actually eligible to have your parents sign. So I ended up coming home, later after school and everything, and went right to my mom and dad in their room and everything. And I'm like, "Mom, Dad, I want to join the military." And they're like, "Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and wait a little bit and really think about it, because that's a pretty big decision, and you're not even quite 17 yet." And I continued to bug them and bug them and bug them, and they could see that I was actually serious. I was doing it for the right reasons and everything like that. I'd really thought it through. And so this one day we went up to Bear Lake, just north of where we lived. And my dad had taken me out on our little raft that we had to, paddle around and stuff, and just enjoying the sunshine. And he tells me, "Craig, out of all the adult decisions you've made as a teenager, me and your mom have been talking, and your decision to want to join the military is one that we respect, and we'll go ahead and set up that meeting with the recruiter and get you signed up." And so, I just, it was like calling for me, really.
I was only 9 when 2001 actually happened, and man, that was just 3 days ago now. So.
Yep.
So, yeah, it fucked everyone pretty good. I didn't really understand what was going on at the time. I was just a young kid, kind of young and stupid, as you probably would know. So,
I think I got a little bit more. I got older and stupider as the teenage years came along, but
even afterwards, we still do stupid things. So, yeah.
Oh, sure.
I'm 60 and I still do stupid things.
That's good. But in all seriousness, though, thank you so much for your service there, Greg. It really does mean a lot. So I guess moving on in terms of influences, I guess who would you say has really inspired you in terms of the instruments that you guys play?
I'll take that first.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Obviously, Ace Frehley was huge starting out. And all props to Ace. After him, Ted Nugent kind of came around, and he was pretty popular for a while, and Peter Frampton. And I learned some of each of those tunes and their styles, and I thought, man, I'm getting pretty good here. Foghat, I was able to tackle some Foghat. And then King Edward came out. Good Lord, yeah, Eddie Van Halen was the first time I heard a guitarist that I knew I would not be able to perfect. I could kind of grab some of his riffs and some of his tapping techniques and things like that. I could do some of that stuff, but when Eddie is just one of those guitarists that it's sublime impact, and you want to emulate really bad, but it takes so much to be able to get to that level of playing and creativity. I can count Eddie as an influence because I think he did shift some things in my brain that kind of helped me be a little more creative. But definitely I can't say I ever attained that skill level I think before him, the songs that I wrote were probably a little plain and a little simpler. And then after Eddie, things got a little more complex, a little more interesting. So I'd also like to credit, and I don't know the man's name, and I feel bad, and I need to look it up, but Nazareth, the band Nazareth, was a heavy influence on me early on. And it's a band I think doesn't get enough credit. I've only seen one other artist who gives Nazareth a lot of credit, and that's Sebastian Bach from Skid Row. He holds them up really high, and I think it's deserved. But we don't hear a lot about those guys. But man, they were a heavy influence. You know, everybody knows "Hair of the Dog," right? Now you're messing with the song. That is not their best song, and it's not even the best song on that album. Miss Misery and oh gosh, Changing Times. That whole album, "Hair of the Dog," was a heavy influence on me. And probably, and oddly enough, where a lot of guys my age will cite Black Sabbath as their biggest heavy influence, I actually wasn't that as familiar with Black Sabbath until like late 70s, early 80s, where I started digging into those guys really heavy, and like, oh my gosh, these guys are, I went and I got the whole discography and just really bit into it. But by then, I was older, and so I wish I could cite Tony Iommi as an influence, but I didn't discover him quite early enough. I'm going to say Jimmy Page as well was a decent influence on me. But the bands that I was in, we didn't play a lot of Zeppelin, but I knew about him and I studied him. I tried to emulate Jimmy as well. That's probably it. Well, one last one I want to give a total shout out to is Neil Schon from Journey. His melodic leads, where a lot of guitarists, they'll just riff and jam and go crazy. Neil Schon, when he wrote a lot of the really super melodic leads, and especially on the Infinity album, and like Lights, Wheel in the Sky, Winds of March, those leads still move me. I mean, like deeply move me. So I want to count Neil Schon as an influence as well.
That's a first. I'd say most people always start with the Black Sabbath and then kind of work their way down. But
yeah,
not to me. That's my Journey fans. That's kind of
I
just kind of sad at the same time, but at the same time it's badass. So
yeah.
I actually do know a friend of mine, and I think he actually spoke with someone who was actually from the band Nazareth. He's actually a drummer as well out of Arizona. So
very cool.
We got together every now and again. So, and I guess Craig, who would you say has been your biggest influence?
I've got a couple. I mean, I share a similar story with my dad. He actually took me and Josh for our first concert and got to see Kiss. So Gene Simmons was pretty influential, especially the showmanship side. I've always been kind of a show off on stage, and I credit him a lot with that, because while he may not be the greatest bass guitarist on the face of the planet, he puts on a dang show.
Well, if you ask him, he is the greatest bass guitarist.
As I started getting a little bit more into it, I would say Cliff Burton, Metallica's former bass guitarist, was pretty heavily influential. I mean, I was born in the 80s, and so I basically grew up with Metallica. Eddie Jackson of Queensryche, really, you can actually hear some of the influence from him in some of the way that I play. And I actually reversed a little bit too, because then I started getting into Black Sabbath. Started out a little bit heavier with some of the thrash metal and stuff, and then some prog metal, and then ended up going back to some classic heavy. Started learning Paranoid and Iron Man and NIB, those kinds of songs. And so Geezer Butler, gave me a little bit of direction there. I mean, you can't really pick one influence, because there's just so many great guitarists out there. But when I found Iron Maiden and really started digging into them, I mean, Steve Harris, his galloping on the bass just blew my mind, and I knew that I wanted to play like that. And while I'm not quite there, I can at least gallop now, and I can do a little bit more of the multi-string stuff while galloping. So definitely up to my game, trying to emulate him a bit. And then I have to cite my dad as an influence. He may not be a bass guitarist, but I always looked up to him as a musician and how much fun and how much love he had for music. And, you know, growing up around it, he introduced me to almost everything that I listened to growing up. So if it wasn't for him, you know, being into music, I might not have been as much into music.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Thanks, man.
That's good, though. So thank you so much there. And it's funny when you mentioned about Eddie Van Halen, too, because I think Van Halen, for me, was actually really what really propelled me into like the classic rock. That's their music as well. So, and, actually, my dad used to have these cassette tapes, and I don't think he has them anymore. And I always put them on my radio. It was always the David Lee Roth era. He had a couple with the Sammy Van Hagar, the Van Hagar days, as they would call it, but Sammy Hagar. But I would say best artwork, though, and I don't think this is without question, it's 5150. So.
Hey, I want to mention, I had to do a quick look up because I mentioned the Nazareth guitarist without knowing his name. It's Manny Carlton. So I'm going to owe that man a lot. He heavy influence. So Manny Carlton, everybody.
Now you're messing with a son of a bitch.
Darn straight.
I love it. You know, it's kind of a shame, too, that because I actually didn't know about those other songs. I think you only hear just about Hair of the Dog whenever they play it on the radio. So
yeah, that's right. And my favorite song on that album is actually, oh gosh, the name escapes me, and I feel kind of stupid because
I just gotta look it up. So yeah,
I have to look it up. I'm sorry. Continue Without Me. I have to find the name of the song.
Okay. To be continued, but I guess Greg here, you can go ahead while he looks it up. But this one goes into the hard topic of COVID here too. So unfortunately, his kids ended up with COVID here too. But I guess when it happened in 2020, I guess how bad did COVID impact you, family, and then music-wise?
You know, surprisingly, with COVID, I've actually never gotten it. I don't know if I happen to be one of those lucky few that has a natural immunity or what. So personally, like my own physical body, it's never affected me. When it comes to my family, everybody has gotten it. So I've kind of been the one that takes care of everybody when they're sick. Musically, we were not impacted because we didn't really start doing anything until 2022. So, I mean, if somebody in our family did get it, then obviously we wouldn't have a recording day or anything like that. But that's just the same, you know, if there was flu or anything else, you don't want your grandpa or grandma or, you know, your brother or anybody getting sick. So it didn't really impact us musically, thankfully. Like it has with a lot of bands where they weren't able to do tours and, you know, had to modify to live stream shows for a little bit and stuff like that. We since we didn't come into the scene until a little bit later, we kind of lucked out on that. But it did actually give me some time, you know, since there was quarantines and some lockdown stuff, to actually sit down and start practicing again. So in a way, it kind of helped with all the time on our hands, at least for me, kind of helped me get back into playing.
It was a blessing in disguise, to say the least. So, yeah. Okay. I guess, Dennis?
I'm sorry, Brian. What was the question? I was looking up Beggar's Day by Nazareth because I felt bad that I couldn't remember the name.
All right. So I figured out the name, Beggar's Day. All right. But it delved into COVID here, too. So I guess, how bad did COVID impact you, family, and music-wise?
Well, it's interesting. So I work for Intermountain Healthcare here in Utah. It's the biggest health system in the Wasatch Front. And because I'm a computer programmer, they were able to send us to work from home. And I've been working from home ever since. And it is the hugest blessing in my life, job-wise. And what that did for me is it added 2 hours of every day to my life where I could actually start working and at the time that I would normally be leaving the house to drive to Salt Lake. And then so I was literally done by sometimes 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which freed up a bunch of my time to work on music, which, if you've ever had an hour-long commute twice a day to and from, you don't feel like doing much when you get home by the end of the day. You just kind of want to decompress and hang out with the family and do that kind of stuff. But having 2 extra hours in my day added because of COVID, and because of working from home, I'm going to have to give a little bit of credit to that for having enough time to actually get things going with the 3 Bravo stuff and to actually have the energy to do it, just being here and not having to have done those normal tasks. I say God bless everyone at Intermountain Healthcare that did not, the nurses, the frontline caregivers, who were obviously not able to work from home and were having to deal with COVID firsthand, straight up. And I know some of those people. God bless all of them. I was lucky to have such a profession that I was able to have things pan out the way they did. And even now, man, I can't tell you how amazing it is to have a work from home job and to still be able to support my family. Credit to Intermountain Healthcare. They're a good place to work. And so I'd say that's about it. That's what it did for me. It gave me the time to actually work and buckle down and work on our music.
I would say it was kind of the same way, but I worked in banking, and so when COVID came around, I still remember the day. It was March 15, 2020, when they said, like, you're gonna start working from home. And obviously, when 2 weeks suddenly became 2 months, when 2 months became 2 years,
Yeah.
and then almost 3 years actually, it was good. I managed to work from home. That was the first time in my life, and I actually got the biggest benefit out of it. I got nap time during lunch.
Yeah.
So
Wait, there's a nap time? Nobody said there was a nap time.
I made my nap time. That's what I'm gonna say. I'm an American citizen here, buddy. So
That's right.
but all seriousness, it's good to see you guys are doing well there. So it's good to have you guys all here for the ride here too. So
Thank you.
but I do want to really get into the hard story about, you mentioned about Craig. I guess he had lost his son. Well, I guess what was the cause? And I guess this can kind of tie in with challenges that you guys face as musicians. So I guess tell us the backstory about that.
Yeah. So back when we were recording for our second album, Divine Wreckage, we had actually just finished recording drums for one of our songs, 1692. And we'd also done another interview with a couple of gals before we started doing our recording. And Dad and Josh, they took off to head back home, and my wife came back.
Craig,
well,
let me have you back up just a pinch on that story, because the week before we actually recorded Connor on 1692. Yeah. Remember?
Yep, that's right. We got we got so we put out a call to family if they wanted to be a part of some of the recording. There was a little courtroom scene in the introduction to 1692. The song 1692 dealt with the Salem witch trials, and so it was a witch on trial, and so cousins and my kids and a bunch of people. They ended up doing some of the background voices and stuff, and my son Connor was actually one of the juror voices in that recording. We fast forward a couple weeks, we wrap up the recording on that song. Josh and my dad, they start heading home, and then my wife shows up and she's like, I can't find Connor. They had left the house so that it was quiet for us since we were recording, and we recorded at my house for it. And she had taken him down to the reservoir, and getting ready to pack things up and everything, asked him to go and get one of my other sons, Brigham, the little guy that you saw earlier. And between the time that she asked him to go grab Brigham and go into the van is when he had actually somehow fallen into the water, and nobody had seen him fall in. Nobody on the beach, none of the family. So we didn't know if he had maybe met up with a friend or, nothing like that. So we've got a billion questions going. After about 30 minutes or so searching some of his local haunts and trying to see if maybe he had, taken off, trying to text him, get a hold of him, things like that, I made the call to go ahead and contact law enforcement. So ultimately, about 20 hours later, they ended up finding him, and he had fallen in the water, and the cause that they put down was that he had drowned. And so we don't know what had happened between just those couple minutes where he was heading to go get his little brother, because he was like the best kid. Okay, if you asked him to do something, he's going to go and do it right away. So you always had that kind of nagging in the back of your head, like there's no way he would have just taken off with someone, and so you're fearful and that the worst had happened, but you still have that hope of maybe he's finally being a dumb teenager, and it just ended up not being the case, unfortunately. A couple of weeks later, or about a week later, we had a poll that we'd sent out to listeners to help us pick a cover song, because we were debating between a couple. We had Bastille Day by Rush, we had The Shape of Things to Come by Gary Moore, and we had We All Die Young by Steelheart. And by one vote, which we credit Connor as the vote that broke the tie, We All Die Young ended up winning. And so it seemed to us to be almost like a message from him that we needed to keep doing what we were doing. He was a big fan of what we did. He was down in the basement a lot during the weekends listening to us record. He had been on some of our recordings. And when we were getting ready for his funeral and everything, we actually found that he had multiple songs of ours on his Spotify playlist. So he was also listening to what we did, and he had his favorites and everything. And so we decided that we were going to power through. We were going to do We All Die Young, and then we were going to finish that album.
I see. And actually, was this ones you shared in your other interviews? Because I think the first time I actually saw you guys, it was actually on Christina and Vox's podcast, actually.
Yeah, we've shared some of it before. We actually did a premiere with Christina. She's always been a really good friend to us, and so we offered, hey, you want to do a full premiere of an EP? And she was all for it, and she's been fully supportive of us, and had been there supporting us pretty much since day one. And she knew all the details about what had happened in the background behind Stoneside, and so she obviously agreed to do it. And so yeah, we've definitely told the full shebang, including the breakdown on each song off of Stoneside, what inspired it, and everything. So
I see. I'm really sorry for your loss. So that's pretty tough. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for sharing it too. So, and I guess outside maybe the mental side of like maybe the mental challenges, I know Craig had probably still taxes on you in some sort of way. But I guess what challenges do you both face these days being musicians?
For me, a lot of it is I keep interrupting myself with projects like moving or doing, just living life and making sure that you have a decent yard taken care of and things like that at the end of the workday. And so you have to make time to actually set aside to create. And so time is probably my biggest challenge, and putting myself in a mindset that I want to do this now, because it's pretty arduous to do a full album. It takes us about a year each. Stoneside came out pretty quick, and I think a lot of that was because just the raw emotion of what we were dealing with. And Craig's ex-wife, Connor's mom, actually sang one of the tunes on that album. Just everything kind of fell into place a little more quickly on that one, but otherwise, so right now, we're trying to decide: do we want to do an all covers album? Do we want to do a couple of covers on a full album again? It's just kind of, it's one of those things where once you get started, you're fine. You get the momentum. It's the getting started part that is my biggest challenge, I think. I'm not locked in yet. Once I get locked in, our fourth album will be making rapid progress. I already have 5 starts. Craig, I don't know if you knew that. Nope. I have 5 song starts, and I have 1 cover tune that Josh has actually done a little bit of vocals on. If I'm sure you're familiar with Styx, Brian. There was a song on the Grand Illusion album called Man in the Wilderness. We're pretty sure that's going to be the cover tune on our next 3 Bravo. The other 5 starts that I have, I actually had written for my high school band, Crystal Rush, but trying to get those guys, after the first 2 albums of our high school music were recorded, seems like all but my fellow guitarist Tim Pagano lost interest in the project. So those songs are not going to be thrown aside. I'm going to use them. So if those guys don't want them, and apparently they don't, we're going to take them as a 3 Bravo song, and I'll have Tim Pagano as a guest guitarist because he's already recorded on those 5 tunes. So that'll probably help me get my momentum back, just knowing that we're about halfway there, at least on the music. No lyrics yet, so Craig, I'll ask you to start scrambling your brain a little bit and start writing. Yeah, so Brian, I'm going to say that's it. It's just getting started is my biggest challenge.
And apparently keeping family secrets here and there, so yeah.
For me, I'd say the most difficult thing with music, I actually do have nerve damage from one of the roadside bombs. So I actually have had to retrain my hands in order to play the bass guitar. And I still don't play quite at the speed that I used to. But I can at least now modify what I was doing so that I can still overcome that. And then I'd say a very close second is the business side of things. I love getting lost in the bass guitar. I love practicing. I would love to do nothing but just sit at my bass and just practice and write and record. But when you put music out there for the world, you've got to do a little bit of the promotion. You've got to do a little bit of, interviews, not that interviews are a pain in the butt, but you end up with just a lot of, I guess, paperwork. I mean, it's all electronic, but you've got to do the copywriting, you've got to do the submission process, you've got to, it's because we don't have, we're not signed, so we don't have an agent that does all that for you, and I have the most time out of the guys, so it ended up falling on my shoulders with a lot of that stuff, and it can get a little bit laborious on that end. So if anybody out there wants to sign off and take over that,
we appreciate it, Craig. We know how much effort you put into all of that stuff. And it's always been greatly appreciated. And at the same time, it's all one of those better you than me, pal.
Thanks. I may check every once in a while. So yeah. But, I did not know about the whole thing with the nerve damage and all that stuff there too. And I guess, were you close to Baghdad, or I guess which part of Iraq were you fighting at?
So I was deployed around the Fallujah area in 2004 and 2005, which back then it was basically the wild, wild west. We had a lot of roadside bomb attacks. I think the average for every person during the time frame that I was there, at least for the infantry side, is everybody got hit at least twice. Me personally, 2 roadside bombs, had hand grenade tossings, and an RPG come pretty close. So one of the roadside bombs actually slammed me into the wall of my Humvee, and that ended up causing the nerve damage. And it's just something that I've had to deal with. Unfortunately, when you join the military, that's what happens.
That incident, Craig, tell him which song that inspired. Did we lose Craig?
So on our first album, Upheaval, it actually ended up inspiring the song 3 Bravo, and it's actually dedicated to my squad mates, as well as two other Marines that I served with that were in another squad that we were trying to get to help. So if you actually want to hear a little bit of a first-person perspective for everybody listening to this show tonight, if you check out 3 Bravo, you'll actually kind of get that first-person perspective of what I saw and what we had to do.
Everybody listen for the phrase "angry orange monster" in that song, and you'll know what Craig felt. Angry orange monster.
I was gonna say, not the monster we see on the drums and those. I thought, yeah, it was the Geico commercials. I think it was what it was. So yeah. Right. But, yeah. Good to see you're doing well there, Greg. So thank you again so much. So, I guess, yeah, let's jump into the gear a little bit. So I guess Dennis, what do you use?
I've always, since I was 13 years old, been a PV man for amps. There's just something about the distortion I've always been able to get out of PV, and I don't do foot switches hardly at all. I've always been able to use the overdrive right in the amp to get the exact sound I need. And I've played with other bands, and I'm not knocking Marshall. A lot of the guys that I've played with over the years, Marshall was their go-to gear. I've never been able to get a good sound out of Marshall for myself, so PV all the way. Guitar-wise, I'm an Ibanez guy. I love my RG. My wife actually picked out the one that I've been using for the last like 25 years, and it's on all of the 3 Bravo albums. I have a Les Paul, that guitar as well. I have a couple of really cheap guitars that, gosh, I don't even know their names. They're knockoffs basically, but they have a decent sound. And one of them, in fact, I think it actually is an Ibanez. No, wait, it's a Yamaha. It's tuned down to C sharp, and so any of the 3 Bravo songs that you hear that are really deep tuned, down to C sharp. They're off of that Yamaha electric, but it only cost me like $150. So I was pretty impressed that I got a decent sound out of that thing. That's it really. Peavy and Ibanez are my guys. So
I just didn't say rip-off. I was thinking, oh no, he got those Chinese rip-offs. As they probably come from overseas, so yeah, I can see why. Right.
Yep.
And Greg?
You want to come join me?
If it's a song that it needs a little bit more beefiness, down tuning, I usually use my 5-string. That is an LTD, which my dad had passed down to me. And then most of the other songs, as long as it's within the 4-string range, doesn't need to be too deep. I'm running an Ibanez as well. This bass guitar is actually one that I picked out specifically as a way for me to continue memorializing my son. I do things a little bit more unique than some others. Some people are more about the headstones or the urns or, jewelry, things like that. But with me, I'm putting him into music. I got some gold lettering put on it that has his nickname, Conman, so I call it my Conman bass. And just the sound on that thing is amazing. For the amps, I started out with Peavy. It was a hand-me-down from my dad, and then we ended up getting a Max Bass Pro or something like that.
It's also Peavy, Craig.
Oh, so yeah, Peavy. Peavy amps.
Yep.
But I don't use, maybe if I did something like cover some Motorhead, I'd probably use like a distortion pedal, but mostly I will sit down, especially when I get a new bass, and I'll sit there and I'll tweak and play around with our knobs and stuff until I can get the sound that I want, that sounds just really nice and warm, rich tone. And I found that Ibanez does that really good for kind of the hard rock and metal. That LTD does really well for that as well. Just the tones of those two have really been able to get me the sound that I want out of bass. But yeah, I don't use really any effects. I just do all the EQ up on the board and on the bass itself.
I guess, does anyone else want to show what Josh's drum set is?
Where's your drum set?
Oh,
it's a PDP. Maple. That's what he's told me. So yeah, PDP. We've had when you listen to the albums, Josh wanted the drums to actually be the real drums. A lot of musicians, and I'm not knocking anybody here when I say this, but a lot of musicians will replace all the drums with samples, and Josh was not interested. He wanted the raw, just, drums, actual drum sounds. So a lot of our recordings might sound a little rough around the edges. It's deliberately so, because we wanted to actually sound like the instruments that we were using, and that was Josh's philosophy behind that. And so we have used a few little samples here and there, like on our song about The Walking Dead called "Look at the Flowers." There's a lot of creepy noises in that thing, and so we have employed samples, but when it comes to the drums, it's all Josh. So PDP.
I was like, I heard that. I know he's over there. I'm sorry, next on your left, I guess. Is he a little camera shy?
Well, he worked really late last night, and he gets migraines fairly easily. And so I did invite him to come and sit by me and share in the interview, but he grabbed the Excedrin and went right back upstairs. So I feel bad for the guy. He's a hard worker, and if you've ever had a migraine, you can know how hard it is to get through them. So.
Honestly, I never really knew the difference between a migraine and a headache, but I just know it both suck, to say the least.
Yeah, they take you down. Migraines will take you out of the game for a full day sometimes. It's unfortunate. We've missed a few recording days solely because of a migraine here and there. So, yeah, unfortunate. Otherwise, Josh would have been here as part of this interview.
Let's see. Actually, I know there's like two sorts of headaches there too. It's the one that will go away after you take the Excedrin, Motrin, or whatever, and then there's the ones you have to vomit it out. So,
yes. Yep. Those are the ones he gets.
those are the painful ones. So, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. You're all soon, Josh. Keep doing what you're doing. So, tell him we said hey.
Definitely.
Okay. So, I guess in terms of other lyrics and like some of the other songs, I know you mentioned some about Greg's experiences in the war in Iraq, and I guess also with Connor. And I know you mentioned The Walking Dead. So, I guess, so what other topics do your lyrics delve into?
We like, all of us like history. And so I happened to stumble on a meme once, about a year and a half ago. There was a man named Hatwe. He was from the Tiano tribe that were dealing with the Spaniards. The Spaniards were new to South America, new to the Caribbean islands. It was a bit after the Columbus era, and Europe was fully aware now of this area of the world, and they were starting to colonize it. Well, Hatwe saw what was coming, the exploitation, the slavery, and all of those things, and so he actually tried to get, his tribe followed him to try to push the Spaniards back, and they tried to unite the tribes on other islands. And unfortunately, or how you look at it, but he couldn't rally enough of the indigenous tribes to fight back and stand for their rights. And so we wrote a song about him. So history, you'll find a lot of historical themes in our songs. A lot. We wanted to. Craig mentioned Iron Maiden being one of his heaviest influences, and I want to say that that's one of the heavy influences of the band in style, because you know how Iron Maiden employs a lot of historic references. The Trooper is in reference to the Charge of the Light Brigade, and just really amazing things have happened in the world's history, and so there's so much to draw from. Depression and anxiety is an endless well of topics and themes. Josh wrote Black Hole, and if you're just a casual listener, you'll think that it's about the astronomical phenomena, and it is. But at the same time, if you listen a little more closely, you're going to find that it's talking a lot about how deep depression can actually go and pull a person in, and hard to pull yourself out of that, just as if you were being drawn in by a black hole. We did also want to pay homage to some of the 80s music that I grew up with and that I went on, pushed onto my kids. And so we try to include at least one song that has some kind of the guy tries to get the girl kind of thing, and the hapless, luckless guy who just can't seem to get that. He shows up to the bar and none of the girls are interested in him, that kind of thing. So we do an homage to those kinds of songs at least once per album. Did I cover all the bases, Craig? Was that about what we draw from?
We've also dealt with trauma. The lyrics were from Brandon, but we put the music behind it. And that's kind of an overall, anybody can relate if they've ever experienced any kind of trauma. Upheaval, the title track from our first album, deals with addiction. I had actually struggled with pills and alcohol. And so it's a song that is more in line with, you hear about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, in heavy metal and rock music. But mine is really more of a warning, from my own experience about the struggle and how it feels to be spinning out and things like that, and feeling like you're losing control, and how hard it is to break that cycle. My dad mentioned the historical references. We also did one that is not really historical per se, unless you happen to be a member of the LDS Church. But it was a story that we all loved growing up when we were all members of the church, about 2,000 young men who went and fought because their dads had made a vow to God or whatever, to no longer fight. And so the sons fought in their stead, and all 2,000 of them survived. So we did draw on the good old Book of Mormon for one of our songs. But I mean, it's from experience in a lot of things. Even when you get to look at the flowers, even though it was kind of like the Walking Dead, inspired it. In reality, when I kind of listened a little bit more closely, it actually really deals with when you face a no-win situation, So we're attacking emotional stuff. We're attacking, really heavy subjects like grief and loss and death. And on the same note, we're also being happy. He mentioned I like to call them our Sunset Strip songs. Just we kind of are all over the place. I like to say that we play what we want to play. Our style is we're going to play what feels right. We don't want to be in. Into the bush. We don't want to be like pigeonholed into a specific subgenre or anything like that. We just want to have fun, and that's what music's supposed to be. And so that's what we do.
I was like, someone got pigeonholed in a situation or something like that. So, no, I see. And, I was gonna say the sex, drugs, and rock and roll is always like a prerequisite on like your resume whenever you had to like come back in like a 70s or 80s band. So yeah. And nowadays it's like, okay, let's try to at least moderate here. We don't need to go too crazy, and it would be nice. But I think I can kind of tie into the advice that you would give to other musicians. So I guess Dennis, what advice would you give to musicians in your neck of the woods, and I guess also on social media, like Christina and Greg from Fox and Sticks?
I would say do it for the love of creation, the love of music, and then if stuff happens for you, great. But if it doesn't, don't do it with success in mind. Don't do it with riches in mind. Just do it because you love doing it. Yeah, money. Oh, I'd love a pile of money. And I'm not going to say that stuff doesn't matter, and I'm not going to say it wouldn't be cool if we got there. Of course it would be. But that's not what's driving us. And so my advice to others would be, don't let that be what drives you. Just do what is authentic to you. Do what feels good to you. And if somehow you get discovered as a result of being real with the things that you're creating, because I believe that that's really the only way you're going to be to become something today, is if you are authentic with everything you're doing. This is going to sound weird, but I discovered a British rapper named Ren, and anybody who hasn't heard his stuff, I put him on par with Eminem, literally. But you can tell he is doing all of what he's doing just for the love of the project, for the love of his music, for the love of getting everything out that he needs to get out. So that's Ren, Ren. Look him up, man. He is an amazing guy. And in a nutshell, I think he exemplifies what it is to be a musician in today's climate of social media, and everything's on the internet, and record companies are only really promoting the generic gobbledygook pop music. I don't want to name any names, but everything, there's just such a sameness to it all. So let that be my last piece of advice. Don't be like anybody else. Just do what you do. So
I was like, oh God, don't say Taylor Swift. We already got enough of her already. So
I didn't want to say the name.
it's all good though. It's all good.
I love Taylor. You know, I'm going to be honest. I think Taylor, I liked her country stuff a lot better than her pop stuff. But yeah, let's just leave it there.
Yeah, same way. I didn't really mind any of her pop music or anything like that, but I think now it's just getting a little too much since she's dating Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think it's getting way overblown than what it should be. So
Yep.
guess Greg, go ahead.
For me, advice that I would give to musicians, a lot of it is in the same vein as what my dad just said. You know, you've got to be authentic to yourself. Don't try to write songs based on what's popular or whatever. Don't try to mimic anyone else. You need to find your own sound, your own style. Me on bass, I have been a little bit more of a bluesy, you know, more of that groove kind of rhythm on the bass. And that's just who I am, you know, and I'm not going to change for anybody else. I mean, I want to be who I am. Be honest in what you're doing. You know, you don't need to do. I've seen the outlandish, you know, trying to get attention stuff. Don't worry about getting attention. Your music should be what's getting you the attention. So you don't need to have the costumes necessarily and stuff. I mean, if it works for you, it works for you if that's who you are, but don't do it just because you want the attention. Don't chase numbers. I see a lot of people that fall for the Spotify streamer, you know, pay us $50 and you can get 5,000 streams type crap. And, you know, because people are chasing those social media numbers, they're chasing those stream numbers, all that kind of stuff. And to me, I'd rather we have 2 people that listen to us, you know, and enjoy what we put out than have 10,000 bots that listened, you know, just so that we have those numbers. And it's interesting because by being authentic to ourselves, I mean, we're nothing big, you know, we're nobody famous or anything, but we still managed to just this year exceed across, you know, all of our platforms together, you know, like Spotify, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. We actually exceeded 100,000 listens, you know, and we're just 3 nobodies from Utah that were able to do that just by being ourselves. You know, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The only other thing that I could really say is I would be dedicated to your craft, so make sure you practice. Be very serious when you're doing it. Treat it seriously when you're practicing. When you're in front of the crowd or, you know, whatever, you should play as if you're doing an arena show, even if there's 5 people there. So whether you've got 5 people or 50,000 people, you give the same energy, you give the same amount to those people because they showed up. And be humble, you know, be friendly, be approachable. Don't think that just because you were up on that stage, you're somehow better than others. The people that are listening and showing up, they're showing up because they connected to you in some way. And so if somebody approaches you to talk to you about your music, listen to them. You know, talk to them for a minute. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no rush. There's, you know, life is going to continue on and you can get to your next show down the road, but have that conversation. Talk to the person that came up to you. They were inspired for a reason. So just take your time with it.
Well, they try to talk to the right people, because I think I knew one friend who actually talked to the guy from Fuel, and not the nicest guy in the world. I think it was because he was at the wrong venue. I think he wanted to be at those bigger ones with the bigger crowds. He ended up in a small one. So
it's kind of sad when you meet somebody that you really admired for a long time, and then you meet them in person. They say never meet your heroes, and I would say it's not true to never meet them, but just kind of be prepared that they're not necessarily what you've seen or what your impression of them might have been. I had a similar experience, what you just described. I don't want to name names or dog on anybody, but I had listened to this band since the 70s, and I finally met the singer in probably about 2010, and he just blew me off like I was not even there, and it was pretty disappointing. But I have a friend who was helping a music promoter at one time who actually got to meet Tommy Shaw from Styx. He said Tommy Shaw is the nicest, most normal person you'll ever meet on this planet. Took all of the time in the world to talk to him about every little thing, just dumb things or big things that Styx was up to. And like Craig was saying, I think those are the best types of musicians. It's that you're a real human being and you can make real connections.
Actually, I think there was the Sebastian Bach from Skid Row. I think he did one interview. He wasn't really like the nicest person in it too. So
yeah,
I see what you mean there. So it is really a damn shame there too. And actually, when you were referencing Styx earlier, I thought you were going to say Renegade because I know that's like their big hit and everything. So I thought that was going to be the cover song. I guess would you cover that at some point?
I would love to do Renegade. That song is iconic. For when that album came out, I forget which album that is. It's not The Grand Illusion. It's the follow-up album, I believe. Oh, it's Pieces of Eight. That's right. I would love to cover that tune. I know Josh could do it. It's pretty comfortably in his range. We'd have to do some pitch correction for the background vocals. Oh, Mama, I'm in fear for my life. But yeah, I'd love that song. Man in the Wilderness was selected mainly for its meaning. And what's interesting too is that Tommy Shaw has a story behind Man in the Wilderness, and that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to do it. Back in the day, a lot of the tours that Styx did was with Kansas. And after those, and typically it was Kansas opening for Styx. Styx was the bigger band of the two. And Tommy Shaw, he said after every night, he would listen to Kansas before Styx would go on. And he kind of felt bad because there was so much meaning in all of the stuff that Kansas was bringing to the table. He says, I've got to write a song that really sinks down into the souls of people the way that Questions of My Childhood or The Wall or Carry On Wayward Son sunk in deeply to people. And that's actually where he came up with the lyrics for Man in the Wilderness. Just a yearning to have a song that had super deep meaning to people. And it's a description of how he felt on the road as a human being and how he struggled to make connections with people, just like Craig was talking about a minute ago. Earlier on, Tommy struggled to make those types of connections, and so Man in the Wilderness kind of addresses those feelings. And so, yes to Renegade. For now, Man in the Wilderness.
All right, good choice nonetheless. But I'll let you do it, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And just real quick, I guess when you guys are creating a new song, and I guess this probably ties in like all the songs you guys have created so far, just under Free Bravo. But have you guys always done the music first and then thrown the lyrics in last, or have you sometimes done it vice versa?
It literally goes both ways.
Yep.
And it's weird too. We have this phenomenon that we like to call the download. Craig's oldest actually wrote the lyrics to our song called Parasite, and there was no music, but they sent me the lyrics. Hey, Grandpa, I've been working on this tune. You know, they had just had a breakup in a relationship, and I read that, and it was so weird. I'm just like, I could literally hear the music as I'm reading the lyrics to this song. And so I just ran into my room and recorded what felt like it was coming to me. And I sent that off, and this grandchild was floored that I could come up with something so quickly and that fits so well. So that's one way it comes. My wife and I visited Salem, Massachusetts, and the lyrics to 1692 just flooded into me. It was crazy. And up to that point in my life, I'd never really even taken a shot at writing lyrics. I just kind of left that to everybody else. But when I saw the powerful scenes of that area and hearing the stories and the injustice of it all, the words just flowed in. And then so I tapped. I went back through my pool of hundreds of riffs, and I found one. I'm like, oh, that's it. So it's just kind of like a download. I don't know, Craig. That's been my experience. What about you?
I mean, it definitely goes both ways. Sometimes the lyrics come first and we write music to it. Like I've sent lyrics to my dad, hey, this is what I've got. That's how some of it starts. And then other times it's been at least part of the music is, hey, I've got this riff. What can be done with it? And then somebody will pick up the lyrics. It was actually really interesting. Our song Coming Home, which was off of our second album, Divine Wreckage, my dad had sent, he was on vacation down, I think it was in St. George, and he went into this guitar shop and was just fiddling around and came up with a riff, and he records it, sends it to me through email. I listened to it, and I just, we call it the download for a reason, because it's like it's almost instant. And I was like, holy crap. And so I had lyrics for him within 15 minutes. And that one just dealt with kind of the way it feel, at least from my experience, the way that it felt, knowing that I was going to be coming home from war, and knowing that, we've let to my wife at the time, and knowing that we've been leading two separate lives for several months, and now we're going to have to readjust to being a married couple again, and that nervousness, that fear, are you still going to remember who I am, because things have changed, and so that ended up morphing into a song almost immediately, and it was literally off of, hey, this riff sounds kind of cool, and I just happened to pick up a guitar in a guitar shop and record it today. So it just really depends. Other times we sometimes have to take a little bit of a writing break. There's times where I will go for a drive up in the mountains where I live and just kind of get out and listen to nature for a little bit and kind of clear my head. It just honestly depends, but I'd say that there's a lot of stuff that ends up inspiring us. Sometimes it's a TV show with Look at the Flowers. My dad literally wrote that on the day the episode aired, where Carol ended up having to take care of Lizzie and told her to look at the flowers, So sometimes it's lyrics, sometimes it's music first, sometimes it's a TV show, sometimes it's a vacation. But there's inspiration everywhere. And when we get it and we run with it.
I think that's kind of key too, Brian, is that if something comes into your mind, whether it's like a 30-second riff or whatever, get your phone out and record that thing. Or if you get just a single phrase, that's how I kind of approach lyrics now. As a single phrase will come, I'll just dictate that into my phone right then and there. And maybe it doesn't turn into anything later, but don't miss anything that comes to you. I think I'll add that to my advice to the other musicians is, don't dismiss anything that comes to you. Record it onto your phone or whatever immediately and share it with everybody else, because like Craig was saying, hey, Craig, I'm in this music store. Check this out, this little riff here. And he's like, holy crap, I know exactly what to do with that. That's been pretty key for us is to just, even if you have just a single line or a single riff or a single bass line or anything, just get it recorded, share it, and then start building on it.
As it goes back to the mind blown thing.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that? It's almost like the universe just touched your mind that day. It's one with the cosmos, like to say.
Yeah. No, seriously.
Right. So, Greg and Dennis, we're now down to the fun questions right here. Guys, ready?
You bet.
Fun? What's fun?
I mean, hey, we have some fun questions. I know we got a little serious at times here, but these are the extra fun questions. That's what we're gonna do. So, all right. But Greg, what would you say is currently your favorite food?
My favorite food? Oh man. Right now, I cook for my house. I'm actually a pretty good chef, believe it or not. So I don't have one skill. I've got a couple. And I've been way into cooking Asian cuisine lately. I don't know what it is. It's the balance of the flavors with sweet and spicy and citrusy and tangy and savory, and it's all just blending in and giving your mouth a total experience. So I've been way into Asian food lately, especially Thai.
I was gonna say Chef Ping Pong before you know it. So it was either that. If you were gonna say Thai food, I would have said Chef Boyardee was the next one. So, okay. Dennis.
I'm going to say for me, it's Indian food, and Utah has a lot of killer Indian restaurants. At Intermountain Healthcare, they've done a lot of hiring of people who have come from India, and they're so highly technical skilled that a lot of folks came over. But then that also created a demand for the food from home. And so, oh man, if you can get some Indian food in Utah, it's authentic. I've heard from a lot of the friends that I work with from India. They say, yeah, this restaurant or that restaurant is authentic. If you can get authentic Indian food, I'm in good shape.
Actually, believe it or not, I interviewed some guys last week up in the New York region, and they said they were real big into curry. I guess, is it curry or is it some sort of Indian dish?
Yeah.
I don't know. They say the UK happens to have the best curry, obviously because of they were the British Empire, part of the British Empire way back in the day. So,
hey, that sounds like a song.
East India Trade Company. There we go.
Yeah.
I think you got some competition. So if you want to try to do a cook-off in terms of curry, good luck.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay. But Greg, here for the next one. What would you say is currently your favorite movie?
Ooh, favorite movie. I'm actually going to go with more of a series because it ties into movies. My wife and I have been getting really into Ring of Power. We're huge nerds with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and so it's been pretty awesome watching that.
I'm surprised I actually hear that because I've always been hearing people bash it way too much, and that's kind of a damn shame. But actually, it's rings, it's plural, but that's why I was doing all the finger tapping there. So that's a good choice. Actually, I thought you were gonna say The Walking Dead. I was gonna do the zombie thing next. That'll deal. Yeah. But I guess Dennis, are you a TV series, or are you gonna have a movie?
Let me give one of each. My all-time favorite movie is actually Dances with Wolves, Kevin Costner. I have just a special feeling about what it would have been like living back then, just post-Civil War. The frontier was still there. If you wanted to get away from everything, you literally could. And his interactions with the natives and coming to understand what motivated them, and then eventually actually coming to side with them and their causes. TV show wise, our current series that we've been watching here in the Bowden homestead is Evil. I don't know if you heard of that one, but it is killer as heck. The basic theme behind the series is it deals with demonic forces, but also takes an approach. And so you've got a Catholic priest with a scientist sidekick, and they've brought in a psychologist. And so among the three of them, they try to solve whether or not the current person struggling is actually dealing with demonic possession, or is there some kind of scientific explanation or some kind of psychological explanation for it. And it kind of leaves the viewers wondering half the time. They think they resolve it, but you're like, no, wait a minute, but what about the thing that flew across the room? So it leaves you to be able to fill in the blanks, and that's one of the things that makes it really good. So everybody watch Evil. I think it's on, actually, I don't know which platform it's on, but see if you can find it. It's really good.
I mean, I've heard Resident Evil, and then I've heard the SpongeBob version be like evil. Yeah.
Or the Mike Myers version, evil, like the fruits of the devil. He did a movie, So I Married an Axe Murderer. If you haven't seen that, you got to pick that up. It's really funny, and the way he riffs through that whole movie, it's one of his best.
Actually, I honestly thought that was maybe an Austin Powers sort of quote. So,
Oh no.
gotta love Mike Myers though. He sticks to his guns. So, actually, it would be interesting because I think he's coming back to Shrek. I think they're gonna do it next year, maybe. I'm not too sure, but we'll have to see. That might be the final Shrek movie. So, see what happens.
Yeah.
Greg, for the next one right here, I don't know if you drink any alcohol, but if you do, what's your favorite alcoholic drink and non-alcoholic drink?
So I am mostly sober now. But when I was a heavy drinker, I was a pretty classic guy of, Jack and Coke. For non-alcoholic, I'm a Mountain Dew guy, although now being a diabetic, it's the Diet or Zero Mountain Dew.
Gross.
For me,
torture with the diet. So, yeah.
For me, I've never liked any alcohol I've ever tasted, and strangely enough, I think I have somewhat of an allergy to it because if I start drinking anything, I start out with the hangover, like it's instantaneous. My nasal passages swell up and I'm done. So I've tried. Not very much though. I can't get past the pain of it. So, but non-alcoholic. If you've ever eaten at Blaze Pizza, they've got this blood orange drink there. Oh my gosh. I can't, it's dangerous to me. I can't stop drinking it once I get started. When it's ice cold, just blood orange. I'm also a Mountain Dew guy. And Mellow Yellow is pretty killer. There was a beverage called Vault that was made for a very short amount of time. It was my favorite and very dangerous to me because another thing I couldn't stop drinking, and then they did away with it. I was real disappointed. So it would be Vault if they still made it, but I'm down to Mountain Dew and Mellow Yellow now.
I think if they had the Baja Blast, I think you guys would be just running into there, just grabbing as many as you can, to be honest. So,
yeah.
Let's see why.
You get me.
I can probably imagine. And it's either that or you just wanted to just go to the Taco Bell closest to you. So
Yes.
I think they were the only one that actually sold it. I don't know if anyone else in the fast food industry actually sell it. So
Not that I'm aware of. Mm-mm.
probably not. But all right, a great choice nonetheless, you two. And Greg, for the last one, I guess, what would you say is currently your favorite song in the mainstream world and then in the indie community?
Ooh, gosh, that is that's a tough one because I listen to all kinds of stuff. I would say right now, a song that's been really resonating with me on the mainstream side. I've been really into Foo Fighters lately. My wife and I actually just went to go and see Foo Fighters in concert about a month ago. And so I've been pretty into them lately. Really love My Hero, Everlong, probably one of my favorites from them. But I'd say it's an overall Foo kick that I've been on with the mainstream side. On the indie side, there's one song that has just really, really stuck out with me. He's a gentleman by the name of Bobby Kane. Really, really friendly guy, really, really great singer. And he released a song a couple months ago. Oh gosh, what was the title? It's Through the Gates, Riding Through the Gates, Shotgun Through the Gates of Hell. That's what it is. Riding Shotgun Through the Gates of Hell. That song, when that comes on, I've got it on a regular rotation on my Spotify and everything. And oh man, my wife, she loves that one too. When it's on, she'll run into whatever room I'm in to listen. His voice is really killer. He just really, really great singer and songwriter. The music in that one is really good, and he does all of it by himself. Like, he's straight up solo. He's doing the guitar work. He's doing the.
Take it outside.
My daughter has a grasshopper in her head. That's the noise that you're hearing.
That will be another good song, yeah. So,
yeah. Bobby Kane. I call him Baby Bobby. Love listening to his stuff.
Okay, and Dennis.
For me, my all-time favorite. Man, there's so much good stuff out there. Can I name two? Let me go with Achilles' Last Stand by Led Zeppelin and Hemispheres by Rush. That whole album side, the Hemispheres album, the Hemispheres song, just the musicianship of those two songs gives me something to aspire to, and they always move me every time I hear them. On the indie side, I'm guilty of not listening to a lot, but I'm going to put a plug in for my favorite indie artist, if that's okay. Joshua Bowden, the singer for 3 Bravo, incidentally, has an independent project called Vitalivore, and it's a death metal project. So he is one indie artist that I actually do listen to, and he has killer music. And it would be shocking to you if you listen to 3 Bravo and think that that's the limit of what Josh is capable of doing. Buckle in, sit down and listen to some Vitalivore. And if you're into death metal, boy, it'll hit your spot. So let me drop that in.
No, that actually is a good choice. And I know he's secretly had a dark side, so
Yep.
everyone always got a dark side in some points. You gotta at least bring it out every now and again, because I'm the same way. But I would like to actually at some point do some clean vocals, if it was like, say, a classic rock group, for instance, in the indie community. Not any of those ones we've been discussing here, too. That would be nice, but no, that wouldn't happen. So, all right. So, Greg and Dennis, we are down to one more question in my podcast right here. And I guess before we jump into it, do you guys have any questions for me or any final words you want to say before we jump into it?
How long you been doing this, Brian?
I think it's going on 3 years, actually. And actually started back in 2021.
That's killer. What made you want to do podcasts? And is it only music that you do, or do you handle other topics?
It's been strictly music, mainly musicians of, like, in this case, indie groups, or like people who just done like a specific instrument on like social media. But I mean to do it, but I've always struggled with like what sort of niche or subject I wanted to get into.
Right.
And when you do podcasting, you want to at least find a topic that can bring on a lot of guests and perhaps keep people interested. So
yeah.
After doing some research, I figured I'm really big into music here, so let's put 2 and 2 together and see where that goes.
We have, at least I'll speak for myself, we have felt very welcomed by you, and the questions are a little less than ordinary, so much appreciated.
That's right. Even though this is like a script that I've always used with like all my interviews, so it's like something to keep me organized. So
yeah.
I guess before we jump into it, anything else, Greg? You want to throw in anything?
Just support indie music, man. There's a lot of talent out there. Dad, I'm going to have to scold you, and I'll have to send some links your way because I've got some really good stuff.
Yeah, please do.
But yeah, support, all your favorite bands. This is to everybody listening. All of your favorite bands started out as a local musician. I like to equate it to when I like to watch football or any professional sport. It can be entertaining. Yeah, it can be fun, and you can have your favorite team. but you want to see people really fight in a game or a match, go watch some college ball. Because when you watch college or semi-pro type stuff, you're going to see people who haven't made it yet that are giving everything they have. And so you're typically going to have a little bit more of that passion, a little bit more of that drive. So listen to indie music, find your genre, and be willing to explore some other genres too, because you'll never know. I mean, we've mentioned Christina a few times on this. She didn't know very much about heavy metal before she started getting into the indie community, and now she's pretty much a metalhead. So, you know, give any music that somebody gives, you know, sends your way a chance, because you never know, it might be your next favorite.
That's for sure. Though when I did interview her, she actually was, I shouldn't say devout metalhead, but she at least was a metalhead at that point, or at least with all the people that she was interviewing on our podcast at that point. So, a little baptism by fire, is what I like to say. Right. But there's something else. Here's how the last question will go. And Dennis, here you can go first. So, given what COVID has done, obviously you guys have been pretty blessed. It was a good blessing in disguise to start 3 Bravo here. I know you guys jumped around with like various groups, but I guess for those musicians and people who are still impacted by COVID or anything else in their lives, what sort of message of hope do you give to musicians and people out there as we try to move forward in a post-COVID world?
I'm going to say, don't give up at all. If it has taken you out of the game for a while, don't let it stay that way. Add back into your life anything that you can that brings you even the slightest amount of joy. If you can do nothing more than just get out your front door for 5 minutes, then do that. Don't be stuck in the house. Don't be stuck, don't be stuck not interacting with people. Wear a mask if you have to. If you're still a bit worried about, or if you've got comorbidities, obviously you're going to be super careful with that. But don't let it keep you from living your life and having the best experience that you can. Add a little bit at a time. Go as slow as you need to go, but add the things that bring joy to your life a little bit at a time, and take back what we used to have, the way things used to be. Take back as much of it as you can.
Got to take that power back.
That's right. Take your life back.
That's it. And Greg, to close it out.
I can't really articulate it better than what my dad said. Get back out there. Do what you can. For me, I said some of that. I was one of the scared ones. I'll straight up admit that. You hear the news stories and stuff, and I kind of shuttered myself up for a little bit, and then I missed out on a lot of things that I really wanted to do, and realized that my quality of life was actually going down because I was restricting myself too far. So yeah, do those things. It's not saying that you have to go in and get in a mosh pit in a crowd or anything like that, but get back into doing what you want to do. Take those small steps and take your life back.
Right. And actually, I'm going to get a little bit here. For Dennis, spoke like a true prodigy. And for Greg, spoke like a true trooper. So there we go.
Thanks, sir.
Nice little shout out to Iron Maiden too, who I'm actually going to see in November. So I'm actually kind of excited about that.
Yeah, I'm going to see them in October.
Right? Are they coming to Salt Lake City?
Yeah, they're going to be in Salt Lake City, and it's actually going to be on my birthday. So
double whammy. So yeah,
I'm excited.
All right, that's all good. All right. So Craig and Dennis, we talked for a good bit right here, and I guess before we close, got any shout outs, any final words you want to give to anybody?
I just want to express absolute gratitude for anyone who listens to our stuff. We'd love to hear from you on any of the social media platforms. Just leave us a message and we'll try to get back to you. We do pay attention to that stuff. So reach out and let's have a conversation. And thank you, Brian, for having us on.
For me, I'll say similar. I appreciate everybody. I track, all the stats and everything, and so I can see what countries are interested in our stuff. So, I never imagined that I would have music that I helped write in 84 different countries around the world. So to everybody who's given us a chance, this small little local trio from Utah, we definitely appreciate every single one of you. And yeah, don't be afraid to hit us up. We are literally normal friggin' people, and we love to connect with you guys. I've especially loved hearing that there was a mom and daughter pair that started doing music. They wrote us and said that they got into actually writing and playing music together because of what we were doing, because we were a family that was doing this. And so, those messages, that they help keep us going too. But we're normal dudes. We don't bite. And so, yeah, feel free to reach out.
But, at least not yet. As soon as you mentioned that daughter and
I'm not Ozzy Osbourne, so if you have a pet bat, you're fine.
Or I don't know what else he ate, or you don't want to definitely piss on the Alamo too. So that would be a bad thing. So, and actually, I was gonna say you should start like the Brady Bunch with like. I didn't mention that mother and daughter group right there. So I'm thinking like, oh God, they're gonna turn into the Brady Bunch next. So
better than the Brady Bunch or the Partridge Family.
I think there was a little less drama with the Brady Bunch. So let's just leave it at that. So.
Yep.
Okay. And just real quick, for the audience sake, can you just mention what social media and streaming platforms you all are on so they can check out your music and maybe interact?
That's you, Craig.
Yeah, we're on YouTube. We've actually started doing some lyric videos. We do have a single music video. We have some more in the works. So be sure that you find us on YouTube. Pretty much all of our links are going to be the exact same thing, 3 Bravo Band in the URL. We did that for uniformity's sake, so it's easy to find us. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Bandcamp, all the typical kind of things like that. Trying to figure out TikTok, that newfangled generation, them kids adding new things that are popular.
Get off my lawn.
So we're trying to figure that one out. Music-wise, you can find us on Spotify, obviously YouTube, as I mentioned. We're on Deezer. Gosh, I can't even remember how many different ones we all have. But yeah, DistroKid sends us out to like 50 different streaming platforms, so you can find us just about anywhere.
Do tell. And yeah, that's no for that too. So, all right. So to close out like this, everyone, my guests today were Greg and Dennis Bowden. They're hailing from the lovely state of Utah right there. So make sure you go hit them up on the socials and everything here too. Check them out on streaming platforms. These guys in the 3 Bravo are kicking some ass right here. Emilio kicking some ass or something like that. So it's good to see you guys are doing well there too. And Greg, once again, thank you again so much for your service right there too. So it does really mean a lot. So, okay. So Greg and Dennis, wish you all the best going forward, mates. So stay safe and God bless out there because it's a crazy world. Not gone. And pose. Stay tuned, y'all.
Thank you, sir.